Good afternoon. January 16th, 2 p.m. and at 2:01 YouTube gave us a hard glitch and a hard error. That's okay. We're going to press on with it. We're going to send a few fast messages out real quick. Get everything corrected here. Get some of my scholars and my researchers in here. But today's show is going to be pretty interesting. It's going to be on BWCs, body-worn cameras. But before we get anywhere into any depth or any detail with the actual live stream itself today, we got to kind of discuss what this is. It's a academic. It's education. It's learning. It's not a news media show. We're not going to argue politics. We're not going to argue current events in the world as it, happens in real life. We're not covering CNN, Fox, or any other news gambit or any other news station. We're covering pure academics, and everything that we do here is posted on Facebook. And to kind of give you the example of everything that we do here, it would be PowerPoint information, it would be research data, research detail, anything that would help a developing scholar about a sociological project, CJ, sociology, psychology, anything that would apply. So we're going to give it a couple seconds for some researchers to show up, some fans to show up. We had it set up for Rumble X, but there was a hard crash in the system, but now we had to switch over and create a new one for YouTube. But we'll be able to circulate this one and put it in the actual two platforms, Rumble and X, for the scholarly researchers in society to take a visit at. Getting a few things set up here, waiting for some researchers to come in, waiting for the information to shift out. Right up above, researcher assistance for this episode. Body-worn cameras, the need, the reason, law enforcement cameras. It's a touchy, glitchy subject. It's a very detailed subject, and even in 2026, with it being rampant, it's a argumentative subject because there's no United States Supreme Court ruling on any case that has been presented to the United States Supreme Court about body-worn cameras. Now, have there been appellate cases to where cases have made its way singularly through the states, through appellate, through jurisdictional venue to the Supreme Court? Yeah, in an attempt. But there's been no decision about body-worn cameras in a police agency, police department, or judicial review agency, meaning law enforcement agency, that would have the first hands-on for judicial review. We're going to check the chat here. We got some coming in. Yeah, I see some people coming in. Let me check my moderators, make sure my moderators are good to go. But back to the topic. Supreme Court. There's been no set Supreme Court precedent. So why a body camera? Why is there a need for law enforcement to film action? It's a sociological need. It's a sociological development. The closest thing that we've ever had to a neutral or third party that is accurate. If you're in the CJ, sociological, psychological profile of practitionership, you would understand that memory recall in a witness is the worst piece of evidence on the planet. It's the worst piece of evidence for any criminal investigation whatsoever. Fragmented detail, unaccountability for linguistic skills. It's a third-party witness to law enforcement, criminal justice, professional practitioner action, and the encounter of criminal justice professionals, criminal justice practitioners in society with society, the encounter itself. And an era when a single viral clip can just run rampant and change the mind of society, influence society, coerce society into believing something that is 100% not true. We need something that is a third party piece of evidence. It's direct. It's timestamped. It's recorded. It actually has the full encounter, the signal, the emotional impact, the emotional withdrawal, the kinetics of it, physical kinetics, which would be physical kinesics, linguistic kinesics. It also rebuilds trust when trust is broken. Yep, I said it. Rebuilds trust when trust is broken. But when trust is broken in society and we argue body-worn cameras, society developed its own broken trust. Yes, society, not the law enforcement agency. And here is why society develops its own broken trust. The academy, the training, the time span that one is in an academy after a long period and arduous trial of selection only teaches tools, instruction, education. The law enforcement officer, the criminal justice professional, is in that academy to elevate, get new tools, new instruction for a new critical position in society, because sociological society has developed its own need for law enforcement. If we didn't have crime and we didn't have robust injury of property, human life, injury of a human life, we did not say death, obscene language, gestures. Think of the simplistics of moral ought to, moral ought not. Society develops its own moral ought not. The crime. Is it illegal? One action? What makes a law? Society has a part in play of what makes a law that the legislative body of the state or the federal government creates for society to abide by. Voting. You vote that one person into that position, that legislative, that executive position to write that legislative word of law. The judiciary review starts at the lowest level. Interaction with criminal justice professionals on the street, and the need for body-worn cameras. Accountability. He said, she said. It's part of the report. The BWC shows residents that the agency is willing to let an objective lens be clear. That big fancy word that everybody loves to throw out there in the world of the media and social media, news media. Transparency. Well, there's your transparency. The camera, the audio, things that are not disclosed by the witness, things that are not episodic memory recalled with clarity by the witness themselves. Accusatory, accountability. It's a gesture survey. It's a show of increased perceived legitimacy of law enforcement, criminal justice. It's created by society, society's actions, society's rational choice theory, society's developmental choice theory. Got to put these together. Law enforcement officers are not grown on trees. They're not raised in a garden and cultivated in a garden. They're recruited. They're self-chosen, meaning one chooses to apply to be a law enforcement officer with an agency. One makes that choice. One has to have that trait development, that moral ought to, that fundamental rationalization of there's a critical need for core values, morality and the understanding and the enforcement of morality that society established on its own. And a tool to account for this is the body-worn cameras. Period. Done. Can't say that the body-worn camera is not a product of society. Society demands the body-worn camera. Truth. Accountability. Losing the 50, 60% drop of social accountability and social trust within an agency. The civil complaint. Reduction. Proven false. Given clarity. A complaint given validity with the camera. Society developed this. Society's actions. Society's mistrust, and society itself, as ones from society, choose to become law enforcement officers or choose to take that journey and step in education, fundamental knowledge, then applying for a law enforcement agency and becoming a professional law enforcement agency. The key word is professional, too. Cameras do not just catch behavior. A camera prevents it. Now, CCTV, surveillance cameras. Yeah, they're there. You can see them. You can bypass them. Pretty easy. Anyone that would plot, stalk, arbitrarily plan a burglary, a home invasion, a robbery in a specific area occupied by citizenry of the community, yeah, you can avoid CCTV. You can avoid security cameras. But the body-worn camera is the preventative measure for argumentative theory, non-credibility, non-validity in one statement, be it the officer, be it the person of interest, be it the suspect, be it a witness, or even be it a victim. There's no perceived of falsehood. It is what it is when one is seeing what one is seeing and hearing what one is seeing. The linguistics, the kinesic, the linguistic, the physical, kinetic kinesics, the physical actions. Cameras do not just catch bad behavior. They prevent it. The camera can prevent it. When one sees that there's a camera and the argument of, I didn't do anything, comes to light, pre-action, rational choice theory, it's a preventative measure. You got to put, perspective in the deterrent, the misconduct. Misconduct is sociological. Misconduct is developmental. Misconduct is developmental through rational choice theory, through one's environment, one's community, one's home, the way one was raised. It's not rocket science. I mean, we're looking at simple human behavior. Use of force needs drop. Why? You're being videoed. It's on camera. You know it's going to be entered as evidence. Resistance, non-compliance, failure to comply, the manipulation of the tool in a positive way to prevent bad behavior. One knows it's there. You're on CCTV. You're being videoed by a camera that has a DVR 2 miles away from the location that you're at because it's got a URL. It's got an IP. It's being sent to the DVR. It's being recorded. Not local, but the body-worn camera is local. It is on scene. It captures gesture. It captures physical appearance. It captures linguistic. It even captures emotional change, venue, linguistic kinesics, and kinetic, physical kinesics. It's going to capture that. It's going to capture the change of inflection, the tone, the choice of words, even the mannerism and the expressionism, the emotion. Put it in the chat. Does society really fundamentally develop its own need for body-worn cameras? Officers aren't created. They're not molded out of clay. Officers come from society. Society wants the threshold, visibility, that word, transparency. Vindication of action, possibly. Society, a reason why. Clarity of the action, clarity of the incident. Look at 2026 and some of the things that have happened to where we need the body-worn camera. I'm going to shift around here for a minute. Anyway, the assistant researchers for this show, episode 40116, 2026, body-worn cameras and why. We got this new fancy mic today, but we didn't get the actual pop buffer for it. It's on order. Rumble is not streaming. Yep, Rumble is not streaming and X is not streaming because there was a hard crash in OBS, and this guy does not know why. But after this one, we'll be able to upload it on Rumble and OBS for simple video viewing, much like a podcast that is done and uploaded. But this is a live stream. Podcasts and live streams are pretty much different. I think you guys all know that. You got the speed and the gist on it. Deterrence of misconduct, the observed effect. What's going on? What is society seeing? That's the question. No one knows but the two that are involved, the law enforcement or the single person of interest or the subject or the suspect, even possibly the victim themselves. It's a deterrent. Cameras, as I said, they do not just capture bad behavior, they present it. Stop it before it happens. The speed of justice, the victims, the officers in court. It's an enhancement. It's a tool to speed the process up. A 2-minute video can replace days, weeks of testimony. A 1-minute video can replace days, weeks, months of testimony. Why? Lie. No credibility, no validity, thus no reliability in the case to use direct testimonial evidence in a courtroom. period, done, over. There's no reliability to it. It's interpreted. We've had an episode here before, episodic memory recall, to where we talked about the trauma, the gestures, the changes, the problems in recovery of memory for a traumatic moment or an incident that someone had to live through or survive. The camera, that 1 minute video, that 2 minute video, the clarity, the trauma, the victim having to watch the actual video, having to watch the body-worn camera data as it was recorded in real time. The suspect, the person of interest. Yeah, traumatizing. You lied. Here it is on video. Now, society. It rolls right back to society. Officers are not grown in a garden. Officers are not grown on a tree. Officers come from society. Criminal justice professionals come from society. Just the way it is. We don't raise them. We do not import them from a specialty plant. Sociologically constructed, sociologically developed in society. Rational choice theory, developmental choice theory, young child, young teen, senior teen, young adult, older adult. Sociological moral ought to, moral ought not. Law enforcement even sees the need for the body-worn camera simply because of reliability, credibility, and accountability for action to contest complaint, to contest the report of wrongful action of the agency to one specific person of interest, suspect, or even sometimes possibly victims, or just society as a whole. Even though the law enforcement officer wearing the body-worn camera is a representative of society and was a representative of society before becoming a professional law enforcement practitioner at an agency, and even when being a professional practitioner at a law enforcement agency, the law enforcement officer, is still a member of society on duty and off duty. You can't contradict that. The officers live in the communities. They're part of the communities. There are plenty of law enforcement officers that became law enforcement officers in the communities that they were born in, raised in, lifelong in one community. That community itself developed the need for the body-worn camera. As stated, an academy is a tool. It's a training mechanism, instruction. It does not go back in time and change behavior from the past that has an effect on present-day rational choice theory. The trait developmental process of the human being still stays intact, even though one knows, one has learned that a previous action is morally wrong. The body-worn camera ensures that the action in the moment, when one knows past action is wrong, present action should not reflect past action that is morally incorrect, morally unacceptable by society. Those law enforcement officers have that blink of an eye to make that choice sometimes in speedy, hasty, traumatic moments and traumatic incidences. I think we've seen that here. Somebody put an example of what that traumatic, speedy haste moment would be to where a law enforcement officer has, I don't know, just a blink of an eye or a second or two to make a decision. The speed of justice, the plea bargain, the testimony. Yeah, we know. Plea bargain's that argumentative two words that, come together in the CJ system that do not make sense and reflect an argument against the Constitution for specific amendments for cruel and unusual punishment, right to face one's accuser, speedy trial, a jury. Even within the plea bargain of accepting a plea versus risking going to trial and getting the full tilt of the actual experience of a sentence, if convicted, that camera can allow for more vivid clarity in the courtroom for a jury to make a decision on. So, the body-worn cameras, plea bargains. The body-worn cameras have an effect. Is one going to take that plea bargain based on what a prosecutor offers, based on the prosecutor's interpretation of the incident through body-worn camera, written report, written testimony, witness statement, victim statement? Or is the person of interest or person that was charged, the suspect that was indicted, true bill, that is now in court at the higher level, circuit court, magistrate court, whatever it would be called in a jurisdiction? Is that person really going to risk a plea bargain versus a trial? That body-worn camera, that camera footage, the body-worn camera data can give more clarity, more interpretation, especially if it's a good defense attorney that can argue both sides. Yep. Plea bargain rates rise and climb. The majority of them right now in 2026, if you adequately do the research, and what some of the researchers have provided for this show right up above, up there, have provided data that show that the actual plea bargain agreements, the acceptance of a plea bargain, have risen. Now, what is the positive in this? Even though I just argued there is a need to risk conscious thought of accepting a plea bargain versus taking it to trial based on what the only true piece of evidence with credibility and validity would be that body-worn camera, the data on that body-worn camera. But in the United States, plea bargain acceptance has increased in rate. Cases close faster. The evidence is there. The details are there. The information's there. You can't argue what you're seeing. How would one argue? You would have to actually do casticum, warrant, request, or interagency cooperation for that data to be sent somewhere to a specialist that is a digital specialist in the IT world, certified, bona fide, stamped on both sides for that specific item, that specific one model version, manufacturer's placement out there in society or agencies to use, that is certified on that and certified in digital forensic evidence review and or recovery to testify as an expert with training, experience, allowed to do so by the judge or the gatekeeper to give one's expert opinion, one's expert statements in detail, that the true video has credibility, validity, and the judge makes the decision for it to be entered as an item of evidence for consideration by the court or the jury, but also cross-examination. Defense can argue against. This is the way it is because you're trying to convince that jury. Hang one jury member. Now you've got a broke jury. May have a hung jury. Prosecutors report that juries trust video more than memory. Well, that's a pretty stone cold hard fact. Episodic memory trauma is as it is. It's episodic. It's memory trauma. It is not something that someone is honestly going to master recall at. It's a traumatic moment. It's filed in that limbic system. It's filed in that hippocampus like a drawer. You got to find it. You got to search it. You've got to open it. And you've got to account for it in the moment. The detail has to be clear. The detail has to have vivid clarity linguistically, verbally, and the choice of words that are being delivered to recall that memory are arguable against the video. What has reliability? What has credibility? What protects the victim? What protects the witness? What protects the one that was indicted by a grand jury and is now in a courtroom on trial? Body-worn cameras work two ways, not just prosecution, but work in the defensive manner as well. The defense of it. Let's check some chat real quick. Yeah, we had a hard dump on Rumble and X, but as said, this video is being DVR'd, not body-worn camera, but we'll be able to upload it on Rumble and X. I apologize, that's a IT thing, but we're still going to press on with this. Maybe we'll get some more developing scholars to pick this up later and watch it. Hard evidence. That's what a body-worn camera is. It's a simple hard evidence. The value. It's valued more than handwritten statements in 2006. It helps resolve conflicting narratives in civil rights and internal affairs investigations. Two different entities, two different monsters. One is DOJ. One is DOJ as well, not the DOJ. And when I say DOJ, I'm referring to Department of Justice and Civil Rights and the entities and the structure of the agencies that fall under the Department of Justice. Internal Affairs would be law enforcement agency. Argument against policy and procedure. SOP, SOG, standard operating procedure, standard operating guideline. Was there a complaint to where an interdepartment internal affairs agency makes an investigation based on the claim, and the body-worn camera data is reviewed and evaluated against the complaint and the standard operating procedure or the standard operating guideline. Clarity, evidentiary value. Was there a violation of policy and procedure? Was there a violation of policy and procedure, or perhaps a violation of state legislative law or federal legislative law to where the incident is bound over or processed over to a prosecutor, be it local and or federal or state? It depends on the actual jurisdictional venue, depends on the value of the evidence of the body-worn camera versus the complaint or the actual report of a complaint or an incident. Thus, the judiciary review, which is going to happen based on the first judiciary review, the law enforcement officer, and the contact with the person of interest and or the suspect. That is the first level of judiciary review, judicially enforcing the legislative law that the executive body of a state or the federal government create. It's kind of like a symbiotic circle, communication, A through Z. Savings. Think of the amount of money that the department spends on complaints, investigations, the time, the manpower. Now, I know it's hard for society to comprehend and hard for society to really understand that when one makes a complaint and an agency internal affairs department reviews the complaint, that takes time. That is manpower. There's no free labor out there. Money. The department has a limited amount of money for a specific time period to use for specific tasking. Internal affairs is one of those entities that's limited with the money, with the manpower, with the time. The complaint comes in. That camera is actually used if the camera is worn, if the camera was turned on. Major conflict also. Money is spent for the cameras, but there's not a standard operating procedure or guideline universal for all agencies in the United States to abide by. I challenge anyone that watches this show, go find one. Go. Thus, the United States Supreme Court has had no decision fundamentally about a body-worn camera. Specifically, a body-worn camera. We did not say evidence, digital evidence. We said body-worn cameras. Didn't say the evidentiary value, did we? The training time. Yes, the training time for a camera. The trauma, the event, the response. Episodic memory for the officer. Why do we need the camera? Well, for the trauma, for the moment, for the credibility, the validity, the incident itself. That officer, that law enforcement officer, that agent, that specialist, that practitioner of the judiciary review is facing trauma, is willfully responding to a traumatic moment, is willfully putting themselves in harm's way to solve a sociological problem that was created by someone in society. It's the rule of 5 that makes the fist. One person creates a problem. That one person cannot solve the problem. That one person calls law enforcement to solve the problem. Law enforcement shows up and solves the problem. The one that created the problem does not like the solve feature or method of the law enforcement agency, thus anger, thus problems, thus dispute, thus the argument of credibility and validity. That's just one example. There are multitudes of examples one could give, and the stability or instability of society and body-worn cameras, and the officer that is facing trauma, along with society that's facing trauma in the moment. Officers responding for a specific reason because there's an incident somewhere in society that is a sociological construct where a body-worn camera is necessary to capture evidentiary venue data, linguistically, physical, moral, emotion, body behavior, pattern shift, aggressive behavior, compliance, non-compliance, even the witnesses. Those that are in the community with their cell phones out, videoing and recording at the same time. There's a need for it. Testimony, witness. Do witnesses lie? Of course they do. Do officers lie? Of course they do. Do victims lie? Of course they do. All lie all day. Sociologically, society lies 10% of the day. Lie. How's your day? Was it a good day? How are you doing today? I'm fine. Are you really? Are you telling the truth? No, I'm not fine. I woke up this morning, I had a headache, and my dog, had an accident on the floor. I had to pick it up, so it slowed me down, and the whole course of my venue of my day was ruined by my dog who had an accident on the floor that I almost stepped in. You're not going to get that detailed information. You're not going to get the true answer. Hello, how are you doing? I'm good, thank you. No, you're not. The lie, sociological construct of the need for the body-worn camera, but yet society argues the body-worn camera is sometimes intrusive, protecting privacy and due process of rights. The modern policies. I'm just going to kind of read this out. It's one of those judiciary arguments at a federal judiciary district level. Modern policies require redaction. Yes, change. Modern policies. We're going to redact this and shift that. Meaning, our department is required to wear body-worn cameras when our officers are out. Something happens, the need, the funding, so we're going to redact the actual standard operating guideline or procedure, thus affecting judicial review. Think of agencies to where body-worn cameras have specific divisions to where the officers in these divisions are not issued body-worn cameras. I can be 100% factual here with you, and those that are in law enforcement and know the criminal justice system, the CJTV, will nod that head yes and attest. The majority of investigators and detectives out there investigating cases and in society, questioning, talking, door knocking, the boots on the ground to solve the case, they're not wearing body-worn cameras. The majority of it is going to be patrol division response. Look at 2026, the protests. Not every officer out there, when you look at the actual videos, are wearing a body-worn camera. So you're not seeing the true rendition of a face-to-face encounter of a protester 12 inches away from a law enforcement officer, because the law enforcement officer has gear on that cannot sustain a body-worn camera because it's protective gear, commonly known as riot gear and or body armor or protective gear. Just the way it is. Simple. And the majority of law enforcement officers and agencies would concur. You do not have enough body-worn cameras out there to shift out to every officer because of the means and the need for use. You got a protest situation in one area, yeah, we're going to dedicate a few cameras here. We're going to dedicate a drone, or that one officer with that you guys have seen with, the big DLSR, two hands, walking around filming everybody, capturing the heated moments. But every officer does not have that body-worn camera because there's a need for the other officers out on the road, the streets, on patrol to have those body-worn cameras to catch, sociologically, society's own developed need for a body-worn camera. The body-worn camera, the reasons, the whys, it's society. Done, over, end of story. If society was perfectly clear and chastain and pure in nature, we would not have a need for the criminal justice system. Thus, we would have no need for CJTV. Meet the rising public legislative expectation. Oh, what does the public expect? What does society expect? A change of venue of leadership in a country, a city, a state, a promise, a lie. Yes, a promise and a lie. We've all heard it politically, but this is not the politically argument program, but a statement, the truth and a lie happens in judiciary review, and thus, again, the need for the body-worn camera. Legislative venue of change. What are the new laws that take effect every year? What are the new laws that one would see are more intrusive than before? What are the laws that one would interpret individually as more overreach, more overstep? Are body-worn cameras overreach, overstep? Even though you're having an interaction with a law enforcement officer, one calls the police, sheriff's department, Did they specifically request to be videoed or recorded? Did they specifically request an officer to come with a body-worn camera? Emotional conversation, detailed personal information being shared with the officer, even though the officer is speaking to someone and that someone in society is not a person of interest of a crime. That person is not a suspect of a crime or not being detained for a crime. Interview in the moment for detaining. Communication, yes, I said interview in the moment for detaining. Sometimes rolling into interrogation, thus the fifth. Did that person request that, BWC? Are they willfully giving that information? Of course they are. They're having that, intimate sociological conversation with that officer, disclosing emotions, disclosing traumatic events, disclosing personal details that are not at expectation of sociological norm, the sociological norm. You're not going to tell society your intimate details, why you're facing trauma, why you're in trouble, why you're a victim, the things that you did for self-victimization. Yeah, victimology. Did the one in society that is talking to the officer, did they know they were being recorded while verbally, kinesically sharing this information with the officer? Intimate details of a relationship, intimate details of family is being recorded. In short, it's that legislative aspect. Is legislative law going to be written or going to be enforced to where society would perceive privacy, expectation, the due process, the right, the warning? Hey, I know we're about to have this conversation here, Bob, but I'm a law enforcement officer and I'm wearing a body-worn camera, so everything you disclose to me is being recorded. Policy and procedure for that to be disclosed. If anybody can find it, please send it. Send it to one of my researchers here at the screen. I've never seen it. Policy and procedure to where officers have to disclose that they are wearing a body-worn camera, and anything linguistically or kinesically videoed is subject to review and interpretation, even privacy violation or intrusion that would be, argued as intrusive or violation by the one in society that the law enforcement officer is interacting with. Now, we're not saying that the intrusiveness or violation of privacy is purposely done. We're talking about the perspective of society. Society is the construct for the need for a body-worn camera. Society's interpretation. How much detail is being given out to be recorded, being saved? Data. That's a tricky question, too. Where does the data go? You're giving out your phone number, your social, your date of birth, private information of others, children, family members. Who's collecting the data? Where's the data going? These are arguments of protective privacy. It's in the research. Again, the researchers in the name, right up above my head, they're the ones that actually gave all of the actual sweat and tears in the articulation of finding the needs, the pros, the cons, the problematic nature of the body-worn camera. In short, society needs body-worn cameras because of trust. It's cheaper to maintain than it is to rebuild. What I mean cheaper to maintain than rebuild, we're not talking about the camera itself. What we're talking about is it's cheaper to maintain a budget on cameras and IT and equipment than to rebuild the trust of society into a law enforcement agency again. That's just the bottom line. Your car breaks down, costs too much money. It's cheaper to go get a new car than it is to rebuild the car that you had that broke down or whatever the mechanical problem would be. That's time. That's community policing. That's problem-oriented policing that has to be restructured, rebuilt, and then sometimes at a legislative venue of change, state, governmental, agency, new police chief, new sheriff, new mayor, new governor, new implementation of legislative expectations and expectations of the agencies given by the legislative executive body. Change. Departments that already have fractured relationships with the community, it's the community's fault just as much as it is the law enforcement agency's fault, because the law enforcement agency and the community cannot come to a common tier of understanding that the law enforcement agency, the majority of it is the community. The law enforcement officers, the agents, come from diverse communities. The academy gives training, tools, education, reference. What one must do, morally ought to, ought not. It is not a behavior change, a behavioral restructure, or a behavior shift. That is individually. That is rational choice theory. Good example of that would be the 5 officers in Memphis a few years ago with Tyree Nichols. Same thing, acquitted one level, indicted at another. It's a sociological matter. Cameras do not solve crime. There's no camera on earth that's going to solve the crime. Even though the camera, videos picks up something is recorded, kinetic venue, a word, a behavior, an action, an essential element for the first step. Excuse me. The action, the essential first step for the investigation. The effectiveness. What is the effectiveness of the data? The effectiveness of the detail that is in the video, the audible part. What is the effectiveness of the officer that is on the scene, working the scene, and the effectiveness of the cooperation of the victim or the suspect? How does it all work together? Is the suspect, the person of interest, the witness, paying attention to the body-worn camera? Is that a critical issue to the person of interest, suspect, or victim that the officer is interacting with? Cheaper to maintain the attention level than it is to try to reconstruct the actual relationship of society and the agency itself. A camera costs so much, rechargeable. You can download it. It's progressive. It can be reused. You're not going to be able to reuse a broken relationship with society and an agency. It's not going to happen. If the relationship can't be repaired through legislative means, administration, command, leadership, a simple fix. Society has created it itself. Video everything that is done. Society has broken the relationship with the agency. The agency has broken the relationship with society, because the agency itself is built from society. Just bottom line. Think bad police chiefs from, agencies and had a blemished record at one agency in another state and come to another state in another city and they become a police chief. Well, what do you think the blemish is going to be in the future for that agency that new police chief came, to from a blemished record at another agency? It's broken in one area. You think it's going to self-repair at a distance or self-repair at this new agency? No, it's not going to. So cameras do not solve problems, but the body-worn cameras kind of give, citizens and officers the judicial feeling, the justice feeling of common sense and facts. Not fear, but common sense and facts. It's going to be recorded. It's going to be argued. The first step toward fair, effective, and accountability. Fair and effective and accountability, policing and fair and effective accountability of sociological interaction with law enforcement by society, because society will recognize what I'm saying is being recorded. What I'm doing is being physically videoed. You can't get away from it. It's recorded. It's evidentiary value, if deemed so by the jurisdictional review in a courtroom, though. Anybody know anybody that's dealt with somebody and actually had to deal with the body-worn cameras before? Put it in the chat. I don't know how many people are watching here. Yeah, we had our Rumble and our X kind of decided to, and believe me, I do not know why. I will get with my IT geniuses and see if they can answer that struggled problem for me. Why does law enforcement need to wear the body camera? We're not talking about the sociological aspect of why the body camera was developed, what the argument is for accountability, but why does the singular officer, the one criminal justice professional, really need to wear that annoying box on their body? Really need to wear it. Why does it need to be there? Simple. Community relations. That's all it is. Community relations. The physical survival, the mental survival, the traumatic recognition, the traumatic survival. Yes, the traumatic survival. Law enforcement was not created to simply be a governing body or an enforcer of legislative venue of law. Law enforcement was created to make society police itself. Example, the Civil War, the military. Law enforcement was structurized under military administration. Slave law after the Civil War. Atlanta, the first development of uniformed agencies. Baltimore, military structure. Society needed it. Society endorsed it. The law enforcement officer really needs to wear the camera for that physical, verbal, psychological, emotional, sociological contact with society itself. It's that reliability of society. Hey, we see the camera. What is the officer's word not good enough? The officer's testimony not good enough? You do not trust the officer? But yet you voted for a specific venue of the executive body to sit in specific positions of power to be the administration of the law enforcement agency and the Department of Human Resources, HR for the department, be it city, state, municipality, or, if you're a lucky agency, you get to pick and choose, future officers yourself. You're not trusting that administration that society voted on for executive bodies to seat, specific members of society to set into those positions of administration and make those standard operating procedures and guidelines. The officer has to wear that body-worn camera simply for community relations. That is it. If we're not talking about we have to wear this camera to video the assault, to video the use of force, to video the witness's testimony, to the dawn of law enforcement, the dawn of agencies, the dawn of the U.S. Marshals, the Pinkertons, the FBI, slave law, the first department in Baltimore, the first enforcement of U.S. military enforcing law in Atlanta after the Civil War. Slave law applied to everybody. The words were taken. Society has developed. Society has changed. Decades. Sociological shifts. Non-normal norms. Acceptance of good behavior, bad behavior. Acceptance of good behavior and bad behavior. The body-worn camera is a sociological problem. It was created by society. How many law enforcement officers or, professional criminal justice practitioners grew up in less than desirable households, witnessing domestic violence, narcotics? One would never know unless one personally has that singular, sociologically constructual relationship with that law enforcement officer. But yet the law enforcement officer is in the position to respond to the same trauma that the law enforcement officer grew up in or was raised in, and then made a rational choice to better oneself, learn, go into law enforcement to, in layman terms again, protect and serve. Protect and serve the community that does not trust the law enforcement officer and votes for specific legislative bodies to set in executive positions to write legislative word of law and or specific executives to select, choose, and hire law enforcement administration. That would be like a city police chief, city commissioner. Unlike a sheriff, voted in. It's a political seat. Yeah, it's a law enforcement position, but it's a political seat, a sheriff. It's kind of that conflict of society. Every judge has a law degree. Wrong answer. Do your own research. There are jurisdictions and venues in the United States to where one can vote a judge into seats. I think we'll do that for a new show. What do you think, moderators? Judges that have no law degree, that are municipality judges, district judges, typically that's a lot. You'll see that a lot in counties. And then with that judge themselves, you have to see decision and enforcement of jurisdictional venue about body-worn cameras. Let's cover 3 more things. Actually, no, let's cover 4 more things for this fantastic discussion of why the body-worn camera. Why is it a sociological construct, a sociological problem? Immediate, objective report writing. Yes, the objective. The objective. What is an objective? The officer's reply. That's the objective, period. And the report. The verbal, the written one. Officers replay the video instead of replaying memory. Watch the video. You can't remember everything. It's kind of like that witness. The worst piece of evidence on the planet, or for any law enforcement agency, be it investigation, whatever the case may be, is a witness. That's the worst piece of evidence alive. AI is better than a witness because AI is programmed by somebody that is not traumatized. They're not in the moment or the victim of a crime. They're writing something. They're inputting data. The victim is not setting up and prepared to input data or write the data and maintain the data in the limbic system or hippocampus because it's a traumatic moment. It wasn't plotted out. It wasn't planned. It wasn't scheduled. It's not something set for the day. It's kind of like the 90%, 10% lie in society. Hello, how are you doing? How's your day? I'm good. No, you're lying. You really didn't have you're not having a good day. You're just being sociological considerate in behavior. Society is acceptance. It's simple objective. Report writing, report development. Departments develop case closure 30 to 50 times faster with body-worn cameras. Can't argue it. The research shows it. And, toward the end of this show, we'll have a few screens that flash through with the actual research, what the researchers found here. Researchers would be Amanda Blankenship, Caleb Foster, Chloe Hensley, and Dylan McDonald, all professional developing scholars that I know. And remember, assignments are due soon. Real soon. All right, number 2. Body-worn. Well, hold on a minute. We got something. I think the judge topic is a good idea. Yeah, it's a great idea. It's kind of one of those, sociologically abnormalities that society doesn't know. Society would think that a judge would have a law degree. And not all jurisdictional venues do all judges have law degrees. I have been in jurisdictional venues where the judges, and like I said before, the majority would be counties. Some cities where the judge is a voted position, and there's follow-on training after the judge is voted into position, meaning the judge was not a practicing, British accreditation registry. That's odd, isn't it? USA Bar, British Accreditation Registry. Is not a practicing attorney, lawyer, defense counsel, whatever it would be for any plateau of a jurisdictional and or legislative argument legally, be it criminal or civil or representation of civil tort, who knows. But there's a position open for someone to run, and they're seated, voted on to be the judge. That's great. Yeah, I think we should work on that. Have the researchers dig deep. What do you think there? Yeah, we should. Immediate objective report, objective report writing, shields against false complaints. Yes. And one thing I noticed in the researchers' documentation, but it was roughly, between 90 and 93%, the body-worn camera complaints were cleared exceptionally fast. And, those that were wearing the body-worn cameras were exonerated as soon as the video was reviewed and or watched by those that are interpreting the standard operating guideline and or procedure and legislative venue of prosecution. Was there a crime committed? Was there something committed against the department's policy, the department's guideline that could be interpreted as criminal? Vindicated, exonerated. The complaint is fictitious, false, has no standing, possibly lie. So even in that actual research, complaints that were made to agencies that were boldly lies, that the body-worn camera proved that the complaint and the linguistic structure of the complaint and the words in the complaint were not factual, had no bearing, had no relevance, had no credibility, and were constructed because the words that were in the report were interpreted but were not present in the video. Vindication, exoneration, unsubstantiated, unsustainable flags, so to say, unsubstantiated complaints. Stronger, faster prosecutions. Yeah. within jurisdictional venues. The detail, the data from the reporters again. Prosecutors in Phoenix, Los Angeles, Chicago say that body-worn camera footage doubles guilty plea rates for DUIs. Well, that I could see. Not all DUIs are videoed. Not every agency has the luxury of having a specific DUI division or DUI unit with that camera set up for, roadside sobriety testing, this breath tester on the side. We're not talking about the actual intoxilizer at, the detention center that, one has to subject to after a specific amount of time after being taken into custody, detained, and transported. For those that are criminal justice and law enforcement, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Typically, most, jurisdiction, 20 minutes observation, or more, depending on some. I know some northern states allow more time, to lower the intoxilizer's reading to give society that better chance of not being charged with the DUI, even after your car's been towed and you've been taken to the detention center. Anyway, the body-worn camera footage aids in the guilty plea rate for DUIs. Domestic battery, domestic violence. Rates have changed up to 30 to 40% with convictions of domestic battery and drug possession, cutting trial prep and overtime subpoenas. Now, as stated before, where does that money come from? The personnel. You don't have every agency in the United States that has a large pocketbook with a large amount of officers, large amount of divisions. You specifically, in the majority of agencies in the United States, do not have an internal affairs division. The majority of agencies do not have an IA division. Why? Money, personnel. Law enforcement criminal justice is already hurting for people in 2026. The shortage of manpower to affect the dissemination of labor. The dissemination of labor meaning who in the structure of manpower is going to be assigned a specific job or a specific task. What is that function? The need is there. Society developed its own need for body-worn cameras. There was a release, I think a few days ago, within this week, of over 130,000 Americans applying for ICE. That's fantastic. That's great. Where are you going to get 130 plus thousand cameras? Well, that's cool. We don't have to worry about getting 130,000 plus cameras and the financial burden on the community of the United States, because a very large percentage of the over 130,000 will not make it. They will not make it due to sociological construct, records, behavior, family history, credit, money, narcotics, physical. They make it through the actual selection. Then you go through psychological, you go through the exams. Yep. Law enforcement exam, professional practitioner exam, written test, intelligence test, articulative test, knowledge test, education test. And then, you struggle through that 4 hour, and sometimes there's a double test, which is a 4 and a 2 or a 4 and a 4 psychological profile. A majority of people will not pass that. So psychological, economical, sociological, all society's construct. So sociologically, society has a big dent to make in that 130 plus thousand of new federal ICE agents. Big dent. So that's going to cut, I don't know, maybe half, maybe. Put your thoughts in the chat. What's the percent? How many do you think, just sociologically, with the construct of sociological behavior, sociological adaptation, sociological development, how much of that 130 plus thousand is going to be cut out of that new ICE agent applicant pool that was released? I think that was actually released through the White House during an interview. I'd have to do that. Don't quote me on who released it, but you can quote me on the 130,000 because I did see it. I did hear it, but I can't remember if it was the White House itself or if it was a DOJ press release at a White House press release. So a lot of it's going to be cut away. 130,000 plus. That's cool. We don't have to have 130,000 plus body-worn cameras because we're not going to get that many officers out of that selection pool. Why? Because society has a big play in it. 133,000 I'd assume that'd be 100. Yeah, that's right. 134,000. Yeah, 133,000 will be eliminated. Sociological construct, sociological driven. Early warning systems. Yep. Software flags officers whose videos show repeated tactical lapses or discourtesy long before a citizen files a complaint. Man, software flags, meaning things that are done, said, or performed that the firmware or the entity of the IT in the camera is programmed to catch. Equaling. Now, I know some have heard of the gunshot and or audible detection systems in inner cities. Not really rural, because you got hunting, you got farms, rifles, shotguns, guns, but we're talking about inner cities, urban. Gunshot detection systems. These body-worn cameras have flag catchers, language, motion, behavior. I've seen, I'm not going to disclose the company, but I was at Fleet C, and there were different cameras there that were reactive to trauma, motion. We're not talking about running, but we're talking about impact, an officer going down, the actual camera being hit hard. Pounds per square inch, pounds per millimeter, pounds per centimeter. It was all firmware developed, but it was all registered through sensory IT that was installed into the camera. Now, if that's possible, the catch of linguistic, the catch of behavior can be installed. Heck, if you can put in IT, this is the type of picture that you want, this is the type of story that you want with pictures in it, and you can put it into Kimi AI. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Kimi AI, K-I-M-I, capital A-I, K-I-M-I, capital A-I. It'll write a whole book for you and give you pictures. Well, I don't think it'll give you pictures, but it'll give you the actual resource to get the pictures to apply it. And then you can go to ZAI, and it'll do the whole gambit for you. It's pretty amazing. So the AI aspect is in there too for the flag catchers, allowing the complaint to be verified, bona fide. Quite frankly, if the complaint says that there was this said, that performed, and the complaint matches the actual downloadable or the body-worn camera data, then you've got credibility to the complaint. Allowing remedial training instead of termination after the scandal. Well, some scandal, requires termination. Period. Done. Over. Some scandal requires officer decertification, post standards, cut, out, done, over. Go be a truck driver. Go cook French fries at McDonald's. That's just the way it is. It's called non-conducive behavior for a law enforcement professional who must abide by legislated post standards and the word of legislative law. Reducing in civil liability. That's the last one right here out of this good list. See the data on this one. Cities that deploy body-worn cameras see 30 to 50% drops in lawsuit settlements. Ooh. The amount of money that a city puts out for a fictitious or non-fictitious lawsuit. Credibility and validity. Cutting it down. That kind of shifts back up to the objective report writing for the response to the complaint or response to the report of whatever the action would be to the agency or to the county or to the state or to the federal, investigative agency that would investigate, the liability, be it criminal and or civil, foreign agencies. 30 to 50% drop in lawsuit settlements. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of expenditure. Saves this, public and society some cash. Some cash to go, go do something cooler than have the cops called on you. That's all I can say. Ensures over 5 to 15% premium discounts when cameras are written into policy. Woo! Insurance and settlements and discounts and policy. Agency insurance policy, city insurance policy. Now I can see how the 30 to 50% drop in lawsuit settlements, because the agency itself got the cameras and provided the insurance agency with direct, credible, validated, just reliable information and documentation and proof that the agency has the cameras and the officers are using them. Thus, the validity and credibility of the complaint made, be it criminal and or civil, or a violation of SOP or SOG, is going to be unfounded, saving agencies and cities 5 to 15% on insurance. Believe it or not, that's a lot. 5 to 15%, especially if your insurance is up in the thousands a month. Freeing that budget up. Yeah, I agree. I'm sitting here reading it in. Freeing the budget up for more patrol cars and more equipment, more response to the community. Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Who got this one? Yeah, this was Amanda Blankenship's piece of data out of that I pulled. Yeah, it's a good point. So that's a lot of. Hold on a minute. That was Amanda's and some of yours, Chloe. Yeah, some of yours. I was able to kind of tie it together here. More more time, more money. That's recruitment money too. That's recruitment for quality versus quantity of officers. That's actually a little bit more of a incentive, more pay as well. More pay as well. So society creates the need for the body-worn camera. Society creates the argument of why we should have something that documents our every move and every linguistic choice when we're interacting with law enforcement agencies or officers. It's a society-born issue, sociologically created issue that is reviewed by sociologically seated executive members of judiciary review. How odd is that? Where's the oxymoron in society created its own need for sociological effective argument of intrusion of privacy? Pretty unique, isn't it? Society's its own catalyst. Society's its own incendiary tool at times. Don't forget, our assistant researchers, if you have questions, send them an email for those of you that watch this video. And we would have chats going, but we got YouTube going that I'm looking at. But, if Rumble or X didn't have their IT glitch, and I don't know what the IT glitch is, but I will find it out and get it corrected for next episode. Next episode will be next Friday. And the next episode itself, I will bring this up for those that really want to know. On the vertical side here. I know, you've got to be patient. The next episode is going to be administration. The authoritarianism of the American law enforcement agency. And by then we will have all of these corrected and fixed so that they launch uniquely together. Again, I would like to thank the researchers for the show. I know it's a arguable topic, the body-worn camera, but also it's a topic that society needs to understand and cope with. Society is its own developer for the need for the body-worn camera. It's not something that law enforcement came up with. Law enforcement is the structure of society, the part of society. Period. Part of society. Law enforcement is the soul, the heart of society. That's just the way it is. For those that want to argue it, well, I'm not law enforcement. I'm anti this, anti that. Law enforcement enforce things that I don't agree with. Well, they're enforcing the legislative word and venue of law, orders judicially given by the executive body that society seats into position. Go protest that. It's the way it is. Society created the need for the body-worn camera. Without further ado, we're going to close this one down and take my word on it. My researchers and I will have a deep discussion on how to get this IT thing squared away, but we will be doing that next week. I know what it is. It's just a glitch and update. A hard glitch and update. I'll have to go through the IT system of those at the UT University, UI, UQ, whatever it would be. University level of genius to get this fixed. All right, as we close the show, we're going to have a few screens with research. Remember, this research is downloadable again at our Facebook page. At our Facebook page, which is this page, Dr. where the cursor is, Dr. Michael, actually it's closest right there, Dr. Mike Gurley, CJTV. And what we do is we take everything and we put it into a file to where one could download it. Right now, the Watched Eye, which is going to be a PDF version of the PowerPoint and the data that the researchers gave me that was compiled into a PowerPoint. Anybody can download it, use it, but it's all PDF. But remember, it is scholarly and published ownership by the researchers above who own it, not I, the researchers own it. But they agree. You're more than welcome to use it for your own research. And specific episode information for research for this, episode of Body Worn Cameras. Other than that, this is not a substitute for a classroom, nor is it a substitute for the, academic experience at a college or a university. This is just an assisting show that gives a little bit more clarity into areas to where research has been performed. It's not our 100% my sole opinion. It's the collective of peer review being presented to you by me through assistant researchers and through academic scholars and through developing and growing academic scholars. So I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back Friday, but we're changing Friday to 7 p.m. and we'll be talking about authoritarianism, police administration, law enforcement administration. Should be a good show. Should be a good show. As we close, the reviews for references, documentation are going to be showing. If it's not fast enough or slow enough for you, reload the show, go back, pause it, get the information you need so that you can be successful in your research. Have a great day.